Oh, that's too bad.
So I should be able to make it home tomorrow. So I'm going to share the screen now, and we'll get started because it's a long Gemara.
You're supposed to be snow tomorrow here.
Here?
Yeah. Starting around, I don't know, 11 o'clock.
That's not good.
Too bad.
So I should be able to.
They're calling it a wintry mix.
Sounds like a drink cocktail.
Yeah. Oh, and Monday too.
Yitvach.
Oh.
Let me see if we can get. Here, there we go.
Yitvach Mati.
You didn't have to brave the snow tonight.
You have snow?
We had slush, compared to Toronto, it was a joke. Like nothing stuck. There's just a little bit of slush that stuck.
You can't get a snow report from Dave.
I could see beyond my driveway,
Okay, good. Let us see the Gemara. So we are on Daf Kuf Daled Amud Aleph. It's a little bit of a challenging daf. So let's get started. The Gemara started with a seeming contradiction with the last mission that we learned in 2 Mishnahs ago, discussing whether or not once the hide is removed from the meat, could this Rika work to be matter the hide if the meat was possible? Let's say the meat became tamei. Could you make his Rika and at least it would be matter the hide to the kohanim? And the Gemara said it was machlokes between Rebbe and Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon. And that's what we discussed yesterday, how each of these two Madamim, Rebbe and Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon, these two shittas as to whether or not you can make as Rikas Adam for the hide alone, how they would learn our 2 Mishnahs. Now the Gemara wants to delve into the Shita of Rebbe and the Shita of Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon, so we're on the second line from the top of Daf Kuf Daled Amud Aleph. So Zok Tehele Gemara, my Rebbe umay Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon. Let's learn more about Rebbe Shita and about Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon Shita. Natanya Rebbe Yomer, Adam Marata al ha'or b'fnei. The dam will be marata on or by itself. Ucheshahu ima basar. What if the basar has the or still on it, and noided like psul? A psul was noided. The basar became tamei. Bein kaidim zrika. Sai if the psul occurred before zrika. Bein la'achar zrika harei kayitzibay. So Rebbe has a kula, but he has a built-in chomer as well. His kula is that if the or is separated from the meat, then the or is independent of the meat, and the zrika sadam will work on the or. But if the or is connected to the meat, and the meat became possible, the or becomes possible. You don't say that once I made this zrika sadam on the meat with the or together, and it was matter the meat, and if later the meat becomes tamei, we say that doesn't affect the or. No. As long as the or is connected to the meat, it's treated like the meat. If it's separated, then even though the meat became possible, the dam, you could still spritz the dam and be matter the or to the kohen. That is the sheet of Rebbe. Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon Omer, ein adam meratze al or b'fnei atzmai. If the or is separated from the meat, the dam will not be meratze. Ucheshahu ima basar, but if it's with the basar, so the or is on the meat, noiled by psul kaidim zrika. If it became possible before there's rika, it's possible, just like the meat's possible. But achar zrika, if it was noiled achar zrika, Akiva,
Sorry, I made a mistake.
Screen. I would appreciate if you let me have my screen back. Akiva?
Yeah, sorry, I had to make sure everybody noticed I came in. Hang on a second. I
We're learning about you today.
okay.
You're one of the features of today's Gemara.
Okay.
Yeah, you're not allowed. You took over the host, and you're not.
Yeah. I meant to. I pressed the wrong. Should get it back.
Oh, that's right. Okay, thank you. Gewaltig. Okay. So Rabbi Eliezer of Shimon Omer, Ein Hadam Meratza ala or b'fnei atzmai. The dam will not be meratza on the or by itself. So therefore, if the or was off the basar and the basar was puzzled, the zrikas dam doesn't help. But ucheshu ima basar, if they're connected, and those by psul kodim zrika, they're all puzzled. Everything's puzzled. But acher zrika, meaning you already made it kosher zrika on the kosher aver that had meat and had or. Then, even if the meat became tamei later, the or retains its kosher zrika. Hurtza basar sha'achas. Once it's hurtza basar sha'achas. There was one time, in one point in time, where there was a good zrika and everything was kosher. Yachshitenu, you could still take the or off, even though the meat became possible after that. But oirei like I had. So Zok to Gemara, let's say this machlokes between Rebbe and Rabbi Eliezer bar Shimon is totally in a known machlokes hanoim. Lema but Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua come in. Let's say they're arguing in the same machlokes that Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua argues. This is a famous machlokes. It says in the pasuk, "V'asisa Eloisecha habasar v'adam al mizbach Hashem Elokecha." V'dam zivachecha yishafech al mizbach Hashem Elokecha v'abasar toich. So the Gemara darshans, Rabbi Yeshua darshans, im ein dam, ein basar, im ein basar, ein dam. If there's no dam, the basar is not kosher. And if there's no basar, the dam is not kosher. In other words, if the basar is not available to make a zrika upon, for instance, it's missing or it's pasul, you can't make a zrika dam. Too bad for the or. That's Rabbi Shusha. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, dam, af al pi shein basar. No, you can spritz the dam, and there could be maratza, even though there's no basar. Shenemar v'dam zivachecha yishafeh. Break the Gemara, according to Rabbi Eliezer, if you don't need basar for dam, and kein matam with loimer v'asisa oileisecha a basar v'adam. Dr. Rabbi Eliezer, that's to teach us a completely unrelated chiddush. Loimer loch madam bezrika. Just like the dam is applied on the mizbech by throwing it, af basar bezrika, so too the only way to get the meat onto the mizbech is by throwing it. You know why? Alamadata sherevach yesh ben kevesh lemizbech. There's a gap between the end of the kevesh and the mizbech. So to bridge the gap, you got to throw the meat over. So let's suggest Rebbe who holds that you could spritz the dam even though it's only for the or to Rabbi Eliezer. He holds like Rabbi Eliezer who holds the dam of the chacha yishafei. It doesn't matter if there is basar. And let's say Umandam Eloy Ortza and Rabbi Eliezer bar Shimon, who says that if the basar is disconnected from the or, you cannot spritz the dam just for the or. It has to be for the basar. Rabbi Yeshua, who holds him ein basar ein dam. Zok to Gemara, nice try. Alibud Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Eliezer, who holds that you definitely can spritz dam even though you don't have basar. That for sure is not consistent with our Rabbi Eliezer bar Shimon. There's no way Rabbi Eliezer bar Shimon could hold like Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi could, but not Rabbi Eliezer bar Shimon. So for sure, Rabbi Eliezer bar Shimon, nobody argues that Rabbi Eliezer bar Shimon will not be consistent with Rabbi Eliezer. Keep pligi, but you know what you could say? I'll leave it to Rabbi Yeshua. You could say that there's a machlokes. I'll leave it to Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua said, "V'asisa eloisecha habasar v'hadam," meaning if yesh basar yesh dam, and main basar ein dam. So that fits in perfectly like Rabbi Eliezer bar Shimon. If the basar is not kosher, the dam doesn't work. So Mandam hurts Rabbi Eliezer bar Shimon, Rabbi Yeshua. He simply glides in with Rabbi Yeshua. Mandam hurts, but if you hold like Rebbe, how is Rebbe going to hold like Rabbi Yeshua? Rebbe holds that you can spritz even though there's no basar. Amalach, Rebbe will tell you very simply. Atkan like Rabbi Yeshua hasam ella bebasar. When did Rabbi Yeshua say that loy hurtza? If it's the basar, meaning if the basar was tameh And the halacha is you're not supposed to spritz. You're not supposed to make the zrikas dam. And main basar ein dam. Then lekap seder l'kayhanim. You know why lekap seder l'kayhanim? Because since you didn't spritz the dam, because you're not supposed to, because the main basar ein dam.
The one you sent me the picture.
Never was the.
So that's Pessy.
Never was the basar or royal kahanim, because the carbon was not in the because we did not do the zrika as instructed in main basar and dam. So if we never did the zrika, there's no loss to the kahanim in not getting their or, because it was never their or in the first place. But what if b'di'evet the zrika was done and it wasn't supposed to be done? So now the zrika was done, the carbon was yes nisratze. Now technically the or should belong to the kahanim. Are we going to take it away from them? Aval or dikap seder l'kahanim. Afilu Rabbi Yeshua moida. Rabbi Yehuda would be moida. Midi to have the evet, because Rabbi Yeshua actually holds that although you should not spritz the dam, but by the evet, Rabbi Yeshua holds if you spritz the blood, it will be meratzeh. The Tanan we learned nitma basar, oy nivsal, oy sheyotza chutz lekloim. These are all reasons why the basar would become tamei, would become passul. It became tamei, it became passul. Or it left the kloim, so all this now is basar that's tummy. So therefore, the lechatchila you're not supposed to spritz according to Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Lezer be Yisrak and Rabbi Yeshua be lo Yisrak. But umaydi Rabbi Yeshua shemzar kurtza. If you made this rika b'di'evet, it was hurtza. So if you did this rika already, now there's a ritzoi. Now you're taking the or away from the kohen. You're not allowed. So basically, the Gemara says that Rabbi could shtem ganz geschmack with Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. But Rabbi Elazar b'Shimon will only stem with Rabbi Yeshua. Gewaltig. Zok ele Gemara weiter. Amar Rab Chanina Sagan HaKayhan. Rab Chanina Sagan HaKayhan said, in all my years in the Beis HaMikdash, I've never seen them take or and throw it out. Never seen it. It must be that or never gets never. There's an or is never disqualified him being given to the Kohen, even if everything around it was possible. Frick Gemara, what are you talking about? I'll give you examples of when or gets burned. Hare parim on this ropen, usirim on this ropen. We know that sometimes the Torah tells you by parim and shrom, the par halm lo shel tzibur, the par kohen Mashiach, the par bodizara, the sir bodizara. All of these karbonos, all the meat with the hide is burnt michutz lamachana. Zog to Gemara, l'mitzvasan loy kamrinan. When the Rebbeinu said, "I never saw them burning," he meant I never saw them burning because it was possible. Avada, he saw them burning things that is the right way to do the Seder HaKarban. Okay, Dr. Gemara, I have another akasha. Hare koidim havshit v'koidim zrika. If you have a piece of meat that has the hide on it, and it became passul or tamei before the havshit and before the zrika, Sai Rebbe and Sai Rabbi Elazar b'Shimon would both agree there that the hide does not go to the kohen. So in a scenario like that, why wouldn't Rab Chanina Sagan HaKayhanim have seen or being thrown out? Zok Gemara chavot kamrinon. Rab Chanina didn't say he never saw or being thrown out, burnt. I said I never saw or that was already taken off the animal, that was skinned. If the or was still on the animal, that I saw. But I never saw them take or by itself and throw it out. And if you look in Rashi and the Mishnah, Rashi actually says, I never saw or by itself removed from the animal. I never saw that being burnt. What would happen if you made a havshit and then the meat became passul, and if you spritz the blood, according to Rabbi Elazar b'Shimon, the or will be passul. According to Rebbe, it'll be kosher. But according to Rabbi Elazar b'Shimon, the or goes to the kohen. So for the Gemara, according to Rebbe goes to the kohen, but according to Rabbi Elazar b'Shimon, the or gets burnt. So why wouldn't Rabbi Chanina have witnessed a scenario like that of achar havshit but kodim zrika? Rabbi Elazar b'Shimon, the Amar ein hadam meratza ala or b'fnei atzma. So first of all, maybe Rabbi Chanina Rebbe spherely. Maybe Rabbi Chanina's kind of held like Rebbe, that's something that would not have been thrown out. It would have been given to the kohen. Even if you want to say it's going according to Rabbi Elazar b'Shimon, so there would have been an example of or by itself that has to be burnt. We had this before. Yes, technically, if that happened, meaning you made Hevshit before the Zrika, technically then, according to Rabbi Elazar, B'Shimon, it would be possible. But it never happens, right? We learned on Amud Beis that they never did the Hevshit before the Zrika. That they never operated that way. So it's likely that Reb Chanina Askana Kayanim never witnessed such a scenario because they never did it that way. Right in Gemara, we have another thing he could have seen. What if after they open up the animal, they take the skin off and they open up the animal, and it turns out that the animal was a treifa? So there, when did the psul come? It came before the hafshit, before the zrika, it came before everything. So surely there, what happened was they did the zrika, they thought everything was fine. Then they did the hafshit, and they started cutting open the animal, and then they chapped that it was a treifa. So now you have a scenario where the psul was there all the way at the beginning before the zrika. So kula alma moida, that side the or and side the meat is possible, but we only discovered it after the hafshit. So why wouldn't that have been an example of Reb Chanina witnessing or to be thrown out? The teretz is a massive chiddush. Kasavar nimtzes treifa b'vnei ma'ayin meratzeh. He holds that if you only discover the treifas later, it will still be meratzeh. You don't look at when the mum occurred. You look at when we discovered it. Since we didn't discover it till later, it would be meratzeh. And they cannot be. If you look at our Mishnah, that's exactly what our Mishnah says. The Katani, Amar Rabbi Kiva, see Rabbi Kiva, the highlight of our evening. Amar Rabbi Kiva, Midvarav Lamadnu, Shamavshit es habechar, v'nimtza treifa. If someone skinned the bechar, and it turned out that the animal was treifa, sheyausu ha'kohanim ba'orim. The kohanim get the or, so clearly it was a treifa even before the zrika. Shema mina. Frank the Gemara, Belamai Kamashval and Rabbi Kiva. I don't understand. From Rabbi Chanina's Eidos, we on our own figured out that this scenario would be good and the or would go to Kayanim. So what did Rabbi Kiva teach us that we wouldn't have otherwise already known from Rabbi Chanina's Kayanim? Now we're going to have a bombshell chiddush of Rabbi Kiva. Zok to Gemara, how kamashlan afilu bigvulim. What does bigvulim mean? Bigvulim means an animal that had a mum. We know a bechar that has a mum is always carbon. It's given to the kohen and it's chulin. The only restriction that he has is he's not allowed to use it to work with. He's not allowed to use it to shear its wool. All he's allowed to do is shecht it and eat it. But it's a regular chulin. Now, what would be the halacha if the animal had a mum and therefore the bailim gave the bechar to the kohen? And before the kohen had a chance to shecht it, it dropped dead. It's a nevela. Does the kohen keep the or? The halacha is no. The kohen doesn't get to keep the or, because you still need the shchita and the hefshet to be mattered. That stands b'mokim the zrika sadam of a carbon. Bam shel chiddush. Therefore, Zok Rabbi Akiva, if you made shchita already on this animal, which was not a carbon, so it doesn't have the heter zrika, it's just a regular chulin animal. If you made shchita on the animal, and then you skinned it, and then you opened it up, and you saw that it was a treifa, the kohen wouldn't be able to keep the or. That's a bombshell finish. I think we should see this inside. Tafilu b'gvulin zok Rashi about 10 lines down in the wide lines of Rashi. Tafilu b'gvulin, I want to learn inside because I don't even trust myself to say over Rashi. It's such a big finish. Tafilu b'gvulin b'char balmum. A b'char balmum is given straight to the kohen. It's not a carbon. Hanishchat boy b'medina. Al mumah. It gets shechted not in the base of mikdash. It's chulin. V'lo yitura akasav el b'achila k'dichsiv b'sharecha toichlenu. Aval emates, if it dies and it becomes an avela, oirei aser b'ton kavura. V'ashemini Rabbi Kiva bam shel chiddush. The heicha de leinika treifasai ad la'achar hefshit. Meaning, the treifa we didn't notice that it was treifa until after hefshit. There are those who change the gears and not shirah shchitasai, but sharya shchitasai. The shchita is matir the or, just like the zrika would have been. Behivshit oirei, so sharya shchitasai v'hivshit oirei. The shchita and the havshata actually is matir the or, ki'ilu nizrak dami b'mikdash. as if in the parallel case in the Beis Hamikdash there was Rikas Adam. But then it's a treif al. So for Chanina is just telling you that a carbon that you only find out that it's treif al that it's nisratza and the coin gets to or. Rabbi Kiva is saying even a bigger chiddush. Even a behema that had a bechar that had a mum, which is not even a carbon, also has ke'ilu a heter because it was shechted and it was hefshad. Bam shel chiddush of Rabbi Kiva. Zok to Gemara vayter. Shemami afil b'gud. Amar Rabbi Kiva Rabbi Yochanan halacha Rabbi Kiva. We pass like Rabbi Kiva that even a behema bechar with a mum that was not a carbon, if it's shechted, then the R is going to be mutter. Even if you find out that it was a treifa later. The Rabbi Kiva le Amar elaka shetir mumcha. Avada, you needed a mumcha to be mattered. Avaloy utir mumcha loy. The hilcha zakedir chachamim, and we pass in like the chacham. So let's have a talk here for a second about what this means to tir mumcha. If a kohen has a bechor, he has every incentive to want to shecht it and not wait for a mum, because otherwise he's got to wait around. Therefore, the halach is, Rav Meir actually said that if a kohen has a bechor that has a mum and he shechts it, but he shechts it without showing it to a chacham before, so the chacham should independently verify there's a mum, and it's not just his determination, then we cancel him and we don't let him eat the meat. So that's what our Gemara is saying. The only time we'll let him have the R is if before he shechted the animal, a mumcha was materit and verified that it was a balmum. Now, Valacha Kedivri Chachamim is Rav Meir holds of this knas, but the Chachamim don't necessarily hold of the knas, that if you didn't show to a mumcha before, it wouldn't be used. And Rashi brings a raya from here. There's a rule, halacha Rav Meir big zeiroisa. Whenever Rav Meir makes a zeira, we paskin like it. But this isn't a zeira, this is a knas, and we don't necessarily paskin like Rav Meir when he makes a knas. Zok ta'helika mishtabayta. Parim on nisrafim, usirim on nisrafim. So we know what those are. It's a paral b'shal tzibur, that's the bakar Mashiach. Bisman shehein nisrafim kimitzvason. If everything works out well and the process works out, where do they get burnt? Nisrafin bebeis hadeshen. They get burnt in the beis hadeshen, which is michutz l'machana. We're going to see tomorrow. It's michutz l'shalosh machanas. Umitamin begodim. And the meat of this carbon that you're taking out to be burnt, the people who are being oisik and burning it, they become na'ava tumah and they make their begodim into a rishon tumah. Vim einam nisrafin kimitzvason. What if something went wrong in the carbon and they're passul? So when they're passul, you know where you burn them? Nisrafim beveis habira, which is in the azara, which is counterintuitive. If they're kosher, you burn them michutz l'machana. If they're passul, you burn them in the bira, in the azara. The reason for it, Rashi says, is because it never got its release from the azara. Since it never got its release from the azara, it's got to be burned inside the azara. But if it's nasa mitzvason properly, then it has a release to leave the azara, and that's where it's burnt kil chasoi chutz misholosh machanis. Ve'ein mitam begodim. If the meat never was kil chasoi, then by the person who burns it, burning the pasula, param anasrafim, sunasrafim, they don't become pasul. It only exerts a causav for people who are burning the carbon that's done properly. Okay, let's turn over onto Kuf Daled Amud Beis. Zok Teiluk Gemara. How do they carry it? They carry an ox out. That takes a little bit of manpower. So they had multiple kahanim that they would use sticks similar to how the Meraglim brought the fruit out of Eretz Yisrael. So that means there would be people in front of the animal and there would be people behind the animal. So what if Yotzu Harishonim Chutz L'Chem Esazar, as they're walking Michutz L'Machana, the people in the front holding the sticks, they were already out of the Azara. But the people in the back are still in the Azara. The halacha is, I don't know if you remember in the 70s, the Lincoln Town cars were like 4 miles long. And I remember when someone took me to New York in his Lincoln Continental, I remembered that the front of the car got there a couple of hours before the back of the car because it was just such a long car. So I remember we used to have to go into bus lane when we would go through the border. And no, it wasn't my father's car. It was actually Alex Lebowitz's car.
And you
Anyway,
never
talking
got
more
to
about
sit
it.
in the front. You never got to sit in the front. No way.
No, I never got to that. I sat in the back, but the back was like it wasn't the back seat. It was, I think, a hotel. It was like huge. It was huge. Zok to Gemara. Yotzu harishonim chutz l'chayim ha'azor v'achroinim lo yotzu harishonim mitamin begodim v'achroinim einon mitamin begodim ad sheyetz. They don't become tamei until they're out of the Azara, and the Gemara is going to bring psukim for this, but we're going to learn that tomorrow. Yotzu elu. The elu, once everybody's out and they're on their way to burn it, mitamin begodim. So they become tamei even on their way to get to the burning place the moment they leave the azar. But Reb Shimon says no such thing. Shimon Omer einon mitamin achayusas ha'or beruban. They don't become tamei until, and it's not even the people carrying it that become tamei. The people who man the fire and deal with the burning at the station where it's burnt, they're the ones who become tamei. And when do they become tamei? When the fire engulfs the entire animal. At what point is the animal considered consumed? Nasim etzvasan, and now someone involved will no longer become tamei. Nitech habasar. Once the basar becomes hard and solid, ein asarif matama begodim. From that point on, we call it nasim etzvasai, and person won't become tamei. And we're going to have a discussion in the Gemara. How well done does it have to be considered nasim etzvasai? Zok the Gemara, my bira. The Gemara said that if the param and the shrofim, shir and the shrofim became fossil in the Azara, they're burnt in the bira. What is the bira? There is a place on Har Bayis that was called bira, and that's where they would burn it. Kol habayis kula kol bira. The whole Beis Hamikdash was called bira. Nemar habira asher hachinoisi. Paul says, "V'shloimo ibni tein leva sholei mulishmor mitzvaysecha edoisecha v'vulkecha." Allah says, "Hakoil v'livnois habira asher hachinoisi," to build the Beis Hamikdash that I prepared. That's what David Amelech said. So the Beis Hamikdash is referred to as the bira. So I guess anywhere in the Azara it was able to be burned. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba bar Ravua, and I believe the hay sticks in an Amar Rav. Let me see if I can find the Pshita Gometas. I think he sticks in an Amar Rav. Yeah, Amar Rav, that's right. So Zok to Gemara. Shloisha Beis Hadeshanin Hain. There were three places that we refer to as the Beis Hadeshin where karbonos were burned. There's the Beis Hadeshin Gadol Haya Ba'Azara, the main Beis Hadeshin of the Azara, Shisham Sarfin Psulei Kachikachim, Ve'emurei Kadishim Kalim, Uparim on the Srafim, Usir on the Srafim, Shir Ben Psul Kadim Zrika. All of these have one common feature, that they had not yet been released from being in the Azara. Kachikachim always need to be in the Azara. Emurei Kachim Kalim also belong in the Azara. And Parim on Srafim and the Sir on the Srafim also belong in the Azara. They don't get their release. Therefore, if they become puzzled, they're burnt there. There was a second Beis Hadeshin that was out of the Azara but Har Bayis. And what did you burn there? Shesham Sarfin Parim on the Srafim, Usir on the Srafim, She Ira Ben Psul Achar Zrika. Where the Psul happened after the Zrika. So if the Psul happened before the Zrika, it was burnt inside. It was after the Zrika, it was burned in this second camp. But if the Parim and the Shrafin, everything's working out perfectly, then Chutz L'Shalosh Machnos, the place to burn that would be way out Chutz L'Shalosh Machnos. Tani Levi. Levi had a different variation of the same three Beis Hadeshins. Shloisha Beis Hadeshanin Hein, Beis Hadeshin Godol, Haya Bazar, Shisham Sarfin, Psuli Kachikachim, Ve'emurei Kachim Kalim, Uparim and the Shrafim, Usir and the Srafim, Shir Ben Psul. And here's where it differs. Bein Kodim Zrika, Bein Lachar Zrika. Unlike the first Shita, where if the Tul Happened Lachar Zrika goes to the second Beis Hadeshin, Levi learns no. Even if the psul is after the zrika, it gets burnt on the base addition in the azar. So what was the second base addition for? Well, base addition achar haya bahar abayis shisham sarfin param on the srafim musir and srafim shiir bam psul b'yitziasam. What if we took the meat already out of the azara on the way to it getting burnt, and something happened? It became possible. Then you burn it in this second place. But if everything is going the way it's supposed to go, the right place to burn it is chutz l'shalosh machim. Gebalt. Boy Rabbi Yirmi had an interesting shayla. Lina mauja toil beparim hanisrafin ubesirim hanisrafin. Now, you don't eat the meat of the parim hanisrafin ubesirim hanisrafin. You burn it. So there's a psul lina. Now, does that lina only apply to things that are eaten, or maybe it applies to any meat of a carbon? Miyamrina and kima hanya lina is bebasar de barachila. Basar that's either eaten on the mizbeach, like from a carbon oila, or basar that's eaten by the kaihanim, or a basar that's eaten by the bailam. That's where you have a psolina. But the meat of these carbonates that are never to be eaten, they are exempt from the psolina. Or maybe loishna, it doesn't matter. Lina is lina. Amarava, hamilsa iboyle labayi. This question Abaye cleared, upashtanale, and we are emperor shaila meha from the following brisa vishavin. So Rashi gives us some background. There's a machlokes tanoim if higel applies to the emurin of the param hanisrafim musir hanisrafim. Now, just to clarify, these param hanisrafim musir hanisrafim, their emurim were put onto the mizbeach. The basar, that's what gets burnt. So there's a shaila on the emurin of the param hanisrafim musir hanisrafim. If there was a machshavas pigol, so he had kavana when he did the shchita to be makar the emurin chutz l'zmanai. Would that be pigol? So there's a machlokes. But b'shavin, everybody agrees shemchisha b'achilas param u'b'sfeirufasan shaloi asoklim. Maybe there's pigel by the emurim, but everybody agrees that if when you shechted, you had in mind to eat the meat of the param, meat that's not supposed to be eaten, or you had in mind even to burn it like you were supposed to, but at the wrong time, chutz l'zmanai shaloi asoklim, that's for sure not pigel. So a machshava to eat these chutz l'zmanai would not be a machshava to pass. So my la, mida machshava like pasla, if the kavana to be makar with chutz l'zmanai, to burn the chutz l'zmanai wouldn't pass, so then actually doing it, actually letting the meat stay over, also shouldn't pass. Leading nami like pasla. Zakkamar, no, you don't have a raya. V'dil machshava to like pasla. Maybe there's no need pigel because it's not a davar hanechal. Aval lina pasla, but lina would pass. You don't have a raya. Tashma, let's try a different route. Again, does the psolina apply to meat that's never destined to be eaten, that's supposed to be burnt? It says in the Mishnah, Param hanisrafin, usrir hanisrafin, ma'alan b'hen mishahuktashu. The moment they're designated as those karbanis, there's a din me'il on them. You're not allowed to have enough of them. Nishchadu, once they're shechted, huchsharu, they are royu now, lipasel, to become pasul, because when they're alive, they can't become tameh. But once they're shechted, they can become pasul if they come into contact with a tul yoim or a mechusik purim. They're also susceptible to becoming pasul belina. So you have a Mishnah that's making a big generalization. Param and the shrubim are subject to lina. So my love, lina's basar. When it says belina, without specifying, pashas anything that was left overnight longer than it should be, not only the emurin, but maybe even the basar. So you have a raya that you have lina by the basar of param and the shrubim. So Loy, lina emurim. It's only referred to the emurim. By the emurim, we know there's lina because they're destined to be nechal by the mizbeach. They're a davar shabba'oichel, and if they're left overnight, they're possible. Frank the Gemara, Avamidikatani Sefer, Kulon Moyalin Bahen, Bebeis Hadeshen, Ache Yuta Chabasar. The Mishnah concludes that all of these items you will be moyal on it until the basar becomes burnt up. So clearly, the basar is talking about the Mishnah is talking about not only the emurin, the Mishnah is talking about the basar itself, as we see at the end of the Mishnah. So we say basar, reishanami basar. So then you have a right that the basar could be possible. No. So come on, meet the eater. Who said? Say for basar, Reish Mur. So come on, Tashma, let's try another raya. The Tani Levi. Levi just said earlier on the daf what each base addition was used for. So one of them was She'ira behen psul b'yitzias. When do you burn something in the second base addition? That's if after they left the Azara, they became possible. So it's burnt in the second area. What did it become possible? To mashma any type of psul. My love lina. Maybe it became possible lina. So you have a right, lina apostles. So psul tuma, psul yitzia. It could be a psul tuma, or it could be a psul yitzia, meaning it left the confines of the Azara before it was supposed to, maybe before this Rika. Maybe that's what it's referring to. Boy Rabbi Lozer. Rabbi Lozer had a shayla. Yitzia mao shetoil v'param anashrofim musir anashrofim. We had a shayla if lina apostles and we did not come to a conclusive answer. So now what about the psul yitzia? Param anashrofim musir anashrofim. You took their meat out of the Azara before you were supposed to, before this Rika. So what's the shayla? Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah be'Abba, alibadu and Amar adayin lo yigiz mani lotzis. By a shlomim, we know the basar of a shlomim. You're going to be able to eat anywhere in Yerushalayim. It will not be confined to the Azara, but that's only after there's Rika Sadam. And there's a machlokes. What happens? We had it recently. What happens if the basar of the shlomim left the Azara before there's Rika Sadam? Do you say anyway it was going to leave the Azara, so there's no problem? It won't possibly say, or do you say adayin lo higiz mani lotzis? Right now we're before this Rika. Right now is not the time for it to go out. If it goes out, it's possible. So the Gemara wants to know what would be by par manashrafim musir manashrafim. Mi'amrina hanimili basar dein tzafei lotzis chayv. You know why by the shlomim you say the basar is possible yotzei if it leaves before the Rika? Because it doesn't necessarily have to leave the Azara. Yes, you're allowed to eat it in all of Yerushalayim, but you can eat it in the Azara too. So there's nothing mandating that it should leave the Azara. So therefore we say adayin lo yigiz mani lotzes. Aval hani desayven lotzes chayva, but the parman esrofin stop shot you'll be allowed after this Rika to take him out. You're mechuyev to take him out. Maybe that makes it a little bit better, and therefore it won't be possible yotzei. I don't know Tashma from the same brayso of Levi. The Tani Levi she'ir by psul b'yitziasim. My lava was the psul yitzia. That's why loy it was the psul tuma or the psulina. So you see that. So then you should bring her out to the psulina. So you see from here that if I go here, I'll push you in that direction. If you go there, I'll push you in this direction. It's got to be either the psulina or the psul yitzia. It can't be both. But since we don't know which one, we can't bring a raya either way. Boy Rabbi Lozer, parim on the srafim, usirim on the srafim, sheyotza ruboy b'miyot aver mahu. Roy the animal. Now Rashi learns that the discussion is lagabe, the people who are dealing with it becoming tamei. So according to the sheet in their Mishnah, that the people carrying it to the base addition they become tamei, and they're going to become tamei. What's considered having left the Azara for the purposes of them being tamei? What if Roy the animal went out, but in order to complete the roiv of the animal, you have to include the arm. Now, the arm of the animal, only a meat of the arm is out. So the problem is, if the arm, you look at it as an independent item, then you look at it like it didn't go out, because roiv of the arm is inside. And therefore, you don't have enough roiv animal out of the Azara. But if you look at the whole animal, the mice roiv of the animal is out. So do you say, so yotza rubai b'miut aver, mao. Do you say this small piece of the arm, we just added it onto the whole body, and we say that roiv of the animal is yotzei? V'halei nafka, and it didn't go out, v'halei nafka, I'm sorry, if you go basar, the roiv of the animal, v'halei nafka. Well, do you say it goes basar the aver? Do you say you look at like the whole arm is inside? Because roiv of the arm is inside. And then that breaks the roiv of the animal, and now we don't look at it like a roiv of the animal left us. Or maybe even though roiv of the arm is inside, but roiv of the animal is outside, then we'll be mitzayir for the meat of the arm as well. Zog to Gemara, Shita the loishafkina on the ruba the behema It's possible that you look at the big picture, and even though most of the arm is in the Azara, since it's contributing to the roiv and most of the behem is out of the Azara, we say that the animal is going to be metama the misasking. What about another scenario? Elo sheyotza chetzoi beroiv hever. See, here we said pashtinan. You be sure you go basa roiv behem. What if you didn't have roiv behem? What if exactly 50-50? 50% of the animals on the inside and 50% of the animals on the outside. But that's only because roiv of one aver is outside. Roiv of one aver is outside. Miut of that aver is inside. So do you say that makes up the half? Because if not, then it's all like it's inside. So high miuto the aver, the miut of the aver. And let's turn on to the daf kuf hey amar aleph. High muted aver, basar roiv aver shadinolay. Do you say that it goes basar roiv, v'nafeklay, and the roiv of that aver is out, and then you say we look at it like roiv the animal is outside, and the person carrying it becomes tamei. You connect it to the behema, and therefore lavdavka is it out, and therefore this behema is not considered outside. Zok Gemara teku, more arranged with a suffix. And that Hashem, we will learn tomorrow, Daf Kuf Hey. I'm hoping that we'll have a quick day tomorrow, because if you'll notice that Kuf Vav Amar Aleph, there's only like a quarter of an amid where we can get to the end of the parak. So I'm going to see if we're able to get to the end of the parak tomorrow. Everyone should have a good Tavach, a Mazel Tavach, a Gebench Tavach. Happy Shabbat.
Ja.
Gezellig,
Wow.
Wann tun wir? 6:45.